to Dominica, I really think we could make it. But as a people, we have to learn to commit. The journey ahead will never be smooth and sweet. But as an ambitious nation, we have to be upbeat. I know we have done it before, so we can do it again. All the pain we've endured, but pride we have to maintain in order to create a better world. Every living soul has to play their role. We have an opportunity to change things around, an opportunity to change things, an opportunity to make Dominica strong. We have an opportunity to change things around, an opportunity to change things, an opportunity to make Dominica strong. We got to stamp out the devil, stamp them out, stamp out the evil, jealousy, not by me, certainly. We got to stamp out greediness, stamp them out, stamp out wickedness, jealousy, not by me, certainly. Tomorrow is the first day of our lives. Let's make tomorrow the first day of the rest of our life. We have an opportunity to change things around, an opportunity to change things, an opportunity to make our country strong. Change, change. I remember the love and unity that we once shared. Starting from the home, the children would be prepared. Food there was a daily part of our living. This society would be part of our children upbringing. We used to eat everything we grow and grow everything we eat. But smiling faces would glow and the people were real discreet. We need to go back to where we were. Otherwise we'll witness things we never seen before. We have an opportunity to change things around, an opportunity to change things, an opportunity to make Dominica strong.
Yes, indeed, folks, we have an opportunity, a golden opportunity, I must add, in Dominica to change things around. And that is where I, on behalf of the Civic Vibes team, want to say a special greetings and welcome to all of you locked into that space at this time on social media. We are streaming this program live on Facebook and also on YouTube as well. So those of you on YouTube or YouTubers, good evening to you in a very, very special way indeed. It is already 20 minutes past 6 o'clock. And so, yes, we apologize for being a touch late this evening, but you know how technology works sometimes. What you want to happen does not always happen. So again, on the behalf of our guests here and Civic Vibes, we do profusely apologize indeed. So which means we don't have too much to say in terms of the introductory remarks. So let me now just move across to Alvin Thomas in the interest of time so that he could give his hi and hello and his opening salvo. Alvin, greetings to you and welcome.
Yes, thank you, Lofty. Good afternoon, good evening, actually, to all our many listeners and viewers who have already tuned in. I can see from the feed already that they are making comments and indicating to us that they're there. And yes, another Sunday, the second Sunday of the year with our program. And I'm delighted, as always, to be there and for us to have that conversation. And of course, we have today with us a very esteemed guest, in no other than the person of Mr. Johnston Boston. I think that's a familiar name in Dominica, in politics and in civic organization. Anybody in Dominica who does not know Boston, well, they need to go do a little research, a little history. But certainly it's a pleasure to have Mr. Boston, who is currently the chairman of the ERC, to share with us his thoughts on this very important matter of electoral reform. Lofty, this is a matter we cannot allow to go unattended in 2025. So with that being said, I'm just happy to have Mr. Boston with us. And Lofty, I know you might come to it, but just in case you don't, on behalf of Civic Vibes, we want to extend sincere condolences to the families of two sisters in the country who passed away just the last couple of days. Evelina Baptist, former chief magistrate and I understand Amelia Simon, who I also understand passed away. So we extend our condolences to the families. They're both folks who are well known in the community. So that being said, Lofty, let's jump and get right into the conversation. Thank you.
All right, indeed. Alvin, thank you very much, my brother, for your opening salvo indeed. And just to extend a little bit here, before I pull in Mr. Johnson Boston on the feed, let me just say, extend on behalf of Civic Vibes and all of you are listening and watching to this program at this time, our sincere condolences as well to one young man and his family in the Salisbury area in the name of Siobhan LaRock. I'm being told better known as Cabra. Dominica basically recorded its first homicide, I'm being told, last night in the village of Salisbury, where it is alleged that one young man from the Kalinago territory is still at large. And so he allegedly inflicted the wounds that caused the death of Mr. LaRock indeed. So again, our sympathies goes out to the family at this time. Mr. Johnson Boston, as Alvin said, no stranger, your name is to Dominica and Dominicans. A pleasant good evening to you, Boston, and welcome again to Civic Vibes and the family there.
Well, let me say good evening to you, Loftus Duran and Alvin Thomas. And I'm always pleased to accept your invitation to appear here on Civic Vibes. I've been here before. I'm here tonight. I want to join you, Lofty, in extending my apology for the late start. I had some connection issue, but we were able to get it going. So we're here. And I also want to join you all, you and Alvin, to extend heartfelt sympathy to the family of Evelina Baptist, from magistrate and the first woman DPP on the island, and all those who lost loved ones in the past couple of days, and also, as you mentioned, Lofty, the homicide news that we received from the Salisbury area. So again, to your listeners and to your viewers, I say good evening, and also want to extend, it is still early in the year, to extend to all your listeners and viewers a happy, productive, and prosperous 2025.
Indeed. Boston, thank you very, very much indeed. We are on a global feed, as it were. And so we are not only talking to Dominicans, Bosso. And so let me extend this opportunity now for just a brief introduction, just in case someone is listening out there and they may not know who our guest is this evening. Brother Johnson Boston, just a brief introduction of just who Johnson Boston is before we get things cracking here.
Well, my name is Johnson Boston. I'm popularly known as Bosso. I got involved in community and political life very early. I serve in my community.
So if you bring your camera down a little, just a little. Okay, great. A little further down.
Yes, I serve in the Maho community and on the village council, on a number of organizations in the Maho community, including the Maho Health Committee, the Maho Adult Education Committee, the Maho Carnival Organizing Committee, and of course, the Maho Development Committee, which led into the establishment of the Maho Village Council. And I serve as well as General Secretary of the Dominica Freedom Party. I am now the chairman. I was appointed a senator in 1990 by Charles and the Freedom Party in government, and served as a parliamentary secretary from 1990 to 1995. I also serve as a senator in the coalition government. I am presently chairman of the Dominica Freedom Party and chairman of the Electoral Reform Coalition. So that is just in brief of who I am.
In brief. Thank you very much indeed. At least our listeners and viewers, those of you who of them may not have known who Mr. Boston is, in a nutshell, in a crunch, he gave you just a brief in terms of the number.
That's a pretty impressive resume, Lofty.
Yes, indeed. All right, Boston, the conversation that we're going to have tonight is one right down your alley in terms of free, fair, and transparent general elections and what needs to be had in terms of the conversations and the different aspects to make this thing called electoral reform a reality in Dominica. Tonight, specifically, though, we're going to zero in on an aspect campaign financing. What does that entail? How that can safeguard our democracy in Dominica. So, Mr. Boston, that is, as you said before, you are part of you're chairman of the Electoral Reform Coalition. That is a number of organizations that came together under that umbrella in terms of, seeking all what is good for our country, Dominica, including the electoral process to make it much more free and fairer indeed. Mr. Alvin, you have your hands up like a student. Go right ahead before we move across to Boston.
No, I just wanted to say very quickly, Bossy, Lofty, I endorse what you've just said, but maybe before we dive into what the meat of the discussion, which, as you say, campaign finance and all of that, maybe Mr. Boston could just bring us up to date briefly, where the ERC is at the moment, in terms of the action and what they're looking forward to. And once you do that, very briefly, we can then go into the meat of the discussion, which has to do, as you rightly pointed out, campaign financing and the whole question of free and transparent general elections. So yes, Mr. Boston, just kind of bring us up to speed and the listeners, what the ERC has been undertaken in the last, I would say a couple months. I know you guys been around for a while, and then we will just segue into the meat of the conversation and the discussion.
Yes, well, I will start by thanking the Civic Vibes for being part of the Electoral Reform Coalition and for playing their part in advancing the discussion for genuine and transparent elections in Dominica. So I commend the Civic Vibes movement for this, and Lofty and Alvin, who have been very powerful voices and contributors to what we have succeeded thus far as the Electoral Reform Coalition. This matter of electoral reform has been on the table for quite some time. The whole discussion came about when we looked at the loopholes in the system, and that governments in the past, we had governments in the past who, yes, when the date arrived for an election, they go to the president and advise, and the house is being dissolved, and nomination take place for an election of members to serve in the House of Assembly, and out of that, a cabinet is being formed with a prime minister to govern the country. But we have seen since the arrival of Roosevelt's carrot on the political scene that he have exploited the loopholes. The first, it was in 2005, when a passport was sold to Susan Oldie, and that passport brought in over $400,000 to the Labour Party's campaign. And since then, they have exploited the loopholes to remain in office. And the Electoral Commission then thought that they had to modernize and, improve on the whole electoral process, and had written to the stakeholders to inform them that they were going to do a cleansing of the list and so forth. And they would appoint numerators to go about in doing this. But then you had a senior counsel, Tony Astafan, who then wrote to the Prime Minister and said madness was taking place at the Electoral Commission, and if you don't pay attention to it, it might affect your winning legacy. Now, a country wants government that don't bother with legacy per se of power, but legacy of service, how you improve the lives of the citizenry from all aspects of governance in terms of the economics, justice, and so forth. And then the government now, the Prime Minister was at the time Minister of Finance, refused to make the monies available to the Commission to pursue that work. And since then, we have been on this discussion about electoral reform. What we have done is then in 2022, the Prime Minister dissolved the House for an election in less than 5 years, as it constitutionally due in Dominica, knowing that Mr. Byron was appointed after the 2019 general election to do a one-month consultancy on reform. And at the time he was about to present his report to the Prime Minister, and he had written to, at the time, the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition then, Lennox Linton, to indicate that he was about to complete his work and he would make the report and draft legislation available in the early part of 2023. The Prime Minister rushed ahead and called a snap election, and the opposition, well, the ERC was formed then on the 7th of November, and the opposition, together with the other groups, civic-minded groups, formed the ERC, decided that the opposition will boycott the election to send a message basically to the government and the world that things are not being done properly, and our electoral system is being hijacked and rigged with unpleasantness and so forth. So what the ERC did, we continued to discuss. We wrote to meet the Prime Minister. That never come through. We wrote to meet with the Electoral Commission. That never came through. We wrote to meet with the President. There was a meeting with Charles Savron, when he was President. And when he demitted office, we met with the present President, who is Miss Excellency Silvani Burton. We had this meeting with her, and the Attorney General was there, and she told us why she invited him. And we not just only talk, we went into real professional work to look at the existing legislation. We look at the Sir Dennis Byron recommendation, what was there before from civic-minded organization in Dominica involving the church, involving the unions and business community. We look at those. We also look at what the OAS, Commonwealth and CARICOM had done. And based on that, which was really in sync with what we have been talking about as a country, as a people, we then came up with about 30-something recommendation. And we put it in what we call short-term, medium to long-term, because we understood clearly that there are things that the government can do immediately. There are things the government may need a little more study to do, and there are things that may need constitutional, review and amendments and so on and so forth. And therefore, we thought we could work that way. We then created a beautiful book with all the information, all the recommendation, and made available to Her Excellency the President, made available to the Prime Minister, made available to the Electoral Commission. Unfortunately, the Prime Minister, nor the Electoral Commission responded. The President Office responded and acknowledged receipt of the document, the information. We've had what we call a People's Parliament on the Bayfront in Roseau, on the riverbank in Roseau. And then out of there, we zeroed down on the recommendation that we feel should be given immediate attention. And as I said, we put it into a book form and made this available to the authorities. So we have been meeting, press conferences, issuing press releases, issuing bulletins on the matter, and so on. So we have been very engaged. Lo and behold, the Prime Minister, what he did, he bypassed all those recommendations made from Mayor Motley, who started, from the OAS CARICOM Commonwealth, who did a consultancy on the reform issue, and Sir Dennis Byron. And the Prime Minister, rejected all of this and decided to form his own committee with the Attorney General as head of that committee to come up with some of their own recommendation to go into draft legislation. Then there were several consultations held. The ERC held a consultation at the US Center. We got some persons involved, including lawyers, to look at the areas and to understand clearly the language, what we call the legal language of this draft legislation, so we can be speaking what we call professional intensively on this matter. And then the government themselves hold consultation, and they kind of padded up with persons who came with no knowledge of the legislation, the draft legislation, but came to bash and came to, criticize the opposition and so forth. So we have done quite a lot ourselves. We had a meeting yesterday. We had an ERC meeting with what we call the stakeholders, the affiliates, both locally and overseas. And we came up with some recommendation that we are going to remain committed to the process, involved in the process, and we will make our recommendation known. We have written to regional and international organizations on this matter and to express our dissatisfaction that the Prime Minister went to Parliament on the 16th of December of last year to present the first reading of this free piece of legislation and announced that he would go back to Parliament in the first quarter of 2025 for the second and third reading and so on. So we are very much engaged, and we are going to remain engaged.
All right, Bosso, I was waiting for Alvin to respond, but thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Alvin. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Bosso, for that update. I appreciate that update. And in doing so, let me just really commend the ERC for the work that you guys been doing as it relates to this particular matter. I just read a quick thing on one of our guests on the program, and they said ERC Skerrit is playing cat and mouse with ERC. And I responded immediately and say, he's not playing cat and mouse with ERC. He's playing cat and mouse with we the people. We the people. This is not an ERC matter. ERC happens to be the organ that is voicing what needs to be done. But as far as the electoral reform process is concerned, it is we the people of Dominica. And if Skerrit is playing cat and mouse, he's playing cat and mouse with we the people. Until such time we the people understand this is our business and to stand up for it, then it will go as it is going. And I'm sure the ERC, as you said, is not going to stop at that. But I think it must be made clearly that this is a people's matter and not an ERC in vacuum. But I want to thank the ERC for the work you guys have been doing. And like I said, I think it is something that that has to be pursued and is worth pursuing. So that's what I'll say for now, Lofty.
All right. Thank you very much, Alvin. Bosso, you referred to it a while ago, but I just need the listening public out there, those who have not, heard that clip as yet, where Roosevelt is sounding very angry in tone, in terms of his discombobulated speech, read a letter that the ERC, a couple letters that the ERC wrote to different organizations out there, basically highlighting our situation in Dominica. Take a listen, Bosso, to Roosevelt Skerrit, and then I would like your response so that the people out there could get a better understanding of where the ERC is at with his response.
A group in Dominica wrote to some international organizations. They wrote to the Human Rights Council at the OS, and we've responded to that. They were completely and absolutely, this organization was completely and absolutely out of place. And they and their requests to us were completely out of the provisions of the charter. And we have responded to them. I intend to make a copy of your letter to us and our response to them made available to the public, so the public can assess their letter and assess our response to them. We have a constitution, we have laws in Dominica. Every international organization must understand that we are a law-abiding country, and we are not subjected to international decrees. Yeah, we have a constitution, and the constitution makes provisions for the Parliament of Dominica to pass laws. I believe that the issues that people raised about the electoral processes of Dominica, we are confident that the bills and the contents of the bills will cure those issues. And so we'll go to Parliament in the first quarter of 2025 to have those bills passed and to ensure that the Electoral Commission has the resources. So they have the legislation and they have the resources to effect the electoral reform process in Dominica and put an end to this long outstanding debate that has consumed way too much time of the citizens of Dominica and move forward with it. And this is what we're going to be doing. And I don't think anything is going to stop us.
All right, Mr. Boston, you heard Roosevelt Skerritt in his own voice in terms of his response when he was asked a question by some journalists here in Dominica. In terms of the first part, let's take the first part first, Bosso. Roosevelt said that the groups, the different organizations in Dominica, which you are the chair of, these groups and Johnson Boston, they were completely and absolutely out of touch or out of whack or disrespectful to be writing to the different organizations out there highlighting the need for free, fair, and transparent general elections in Dominica. Let's take that first part first, your response, and we can move on.
Well, I mean, he did not have the guts to name the organization. So he didn't mention ERC. He said a group of persons and so forth. And to use the phrase that he used of being out of place, yes, tells you he is lacking in his understanding of international affairs and collectivity in terms of the various treaties that we have ourselves agreed to, adopted in the international and regional communities, to belong to organizations, reputable organizations that, you know, look at the whole aspect of good governance and the various islands and so forth. And in that case, I think citizens have a right, if they've been ignored by the government, of wanting to do the right thing, to be engaged, to do the right thing, to write to this organization. We belong to the UN, we belong to the OAS, we belong to all of the treaties, we belong to CARICOM, we belong to the OECS, and so forth. And therefore, we have, as a people, as an organization, that civic duty, okay, to get in contact with these persons and to lay our case before them and to listen to what they have to say. And they have seen merit in what we have written to them about, because I can tell you, and we have announced it, that the ARC have written to the OAS, but the Prime Minister didn't have the courage to say who the organization was. He said he's going to publish the letter. We challenge him to publish the letter or the letters so we can see what whoever wrote and what the response that the OAS gave to him and what caused him to be so upset and so on about this. But I would say he's out of place as Prime Minister not to want to engage with the Dominican people on matters of such importance, because electoral reform is not a Skerritt Labour Party issue. It is a Dominican people issue. In fact, the Electoral Commission should be the star in this matter, and Roosevelt Skerritt, as Prime Minister of Dominica, and his government as government, will provide the necessary resources for them. And in that case, they participate as a stakeholder because he's also leader of a political party. So at the end of the exercise, we can all have what we call and what we're asking for, a level playing field for every citizen to participate. So if you believe election is his, and therefore he must dictate to people what they want. We've had more powerful prime ministers than him before, more educated prime ministers, more connected prime ministers in the world than him. And they all listened, and they invited various groups. I remember the Labour Party under Patrick John had Mr. Savary under house arrest. But when come to this to discuss matters of the Public Service Union now, which was the CSC, he invited Mr. Savary and his team to meet with him and so on. So I don't know what this prime minister is talking about, what he understands about being a prime minister, and how he sees his role in governing the country.
Yeah, I think that is well said, Mr. Boston. And you make a very fundamental point. The understanding of international relations and how these things matter. Dominica is not an entity on its own. And to say in the comments that I just heard that he's not bound or bounded by treaties and whatever this organization does, in my mind, clearly suggests, as you rightly said, he has no understanding of those particular matters. I mean, if I may add as well, I recall at the eve of the 2019 general election, the Prime Minister made a request to the OECS, Regional Security Forces, to send those forces down to Dominica because he felt that there was some security issues taking place. And we know what happened in Salisbury. There's no need to go over that. And that was a regional body that he called on. And now he's saying that the ARC, and like you said, I mean, he says a group in Dominica. The ARC is made up of several civic organizations. And to come across as if, well, the ERC is out of order and the OAS, who happened to be the organization I believe who wrote him, I mean, it just, it's just disingenuous, and I don't even know what to make of it, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Lofty.
Yeah, thank you, Alvin. Bosso, you made a very interesting comment just before we go to the second leg of Scary Statements, where you spoke about the issues that we have been clamoring about. The bills, the present bills will cure these issues. You made a statement about in PJ days, PJ had Charlo under house arrest. Can you just give us what transpired there, how that played out, so that, you know, to put that into context, please? Very interesting comment.
I missed that question. You commented a little low.
You said previously that Patrick Rowland John, former Prime Minister, had Charles Savre under some sort of house arrest. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you, yes.
Yes. So just go back there, roll back the tape. Give us the scenario, how that played out then and what caused that.
Well, Mr. Savre at the time was General Secretary of the Public Service Union. You had a gentleman called Mr. Maxime and a few others who were doing the work of the union and who were putting forward to the government the requests of the membership for salary increase, and improved working condition in the various areas of the public service. And then the government thought that these guys were kind of, if you like, coming across to them as being militant and so forth, and being, if you like, very active in what they were doing. In that case, they were placed on the house arrest. I remember Mr. Savre himself saying that when he had to go and visit his mother in Portsmouth and his father in Portsmouth, he was escorted by police to go to Portsmouth, see his mother and father, spend a few minutes there, and drove back to Roseau, to his home with police escort. But Patrick still found it necessary to call him and his team. At the time, the Maxime gentleman, I think, was president. Alvin can probably help me if
Christopher Maxime,
and he met with them.
And Ozzy Sims was also under house arrest.
Right, and the matter was resolved, and so on. I mean, I was in government, and I can tell you, we sat in cabinet. I was acting minister then, and we passed an SR&O where we increased vehicle license. And then the taxi association at the time decided to stand up against it, and the Labour Party, led by Rosie Douglas, deceased, joined the taxi association, and they decided to mobilize, and people came out quite heavily in Roseau to protest the increase of licenses. And I remember when Mr. Brian Allen and Mr. Menard called me and said they were going to work. If I was coming, I said, no, I'm not going to trespass in this blockage into Roseau. I said, my home. And as I said to you, I had a cup just a little I had a cup which I bought with a Dominica parrot and flag on it. I love that cup so much. And that moment the cup wouldn't break. That's why I said that may be a sign. So I'm not going. So I stayed at my home. So Brian Allen and
where's the Chanchill?
Still around. Jasmine died. They walked from Kenfield to Ministry. Nobody harassed them. People shouted and say, remove the license. This is a normal thing in a democratic society. Move the license and so on. And then the following day, the thing continued. We met in Parliament, in Cabinet, sorry. And a delegation of the taxi people with Rosie Douglas came to Cabinet to meet the Cabinet members. And when we sat with them, we realized the size of the increase. And Mr. Miller said when he went to pay his own license, he realized the increase was so, heavy that they had a case. And the matter was withdrawn and settled. And I remember we sat there, continued the matters, and then Mrs. Zamo, who is still alive, was the Prime Minister's secretary, Ms. Charles, Prime Minister's secretary, and she came in and said, Madam Prime Minister, Mr. Douglas came back, he said, I want to see you. So Michelle said, what does he want again? We just settled the matter. What is it? So anyway, let him in. He came in and he told us there, referring to Michelle, Madam Prime Minister, the people outside don't want to go. Can you please come and speak to them to tell them the matter is settled? Michelle told him, you start your matter, go and settle it, and so on. Nobody was arrested. So there will always be differences in the society. And even those of us who say we're out of place, we have a right to be interested in the politics of our country. He's out of place to want to deny us that right. And I do not want to go into the meat yet, but just to say, though, election have consequences. And I've made the point earlier on somebody say cats and mouse between the ERC. The ERC basically is just, if you like, what I call it? We are the padding between SCARIT, government, let's include the Electoral Commission, and the people of Dominica who may want to take matters into their own hand. So all what we're doing is to prevent people who are very much, vexed about what is being done and what is not being done, and they want to take matters in their own hand. So we are kind of creating a pattern between the two so we can settle this matter amicably. That's what we're doing. So it is a people of Dominica issue, and I think people have a right to understand that election have consequences. If you elect the wrong set of people, I mean, obviously you'll get the government you does not deserve.
Yeah. Nice piece, Bosso, in terms of going back a little so that, some of us can understand how things played out back then and compare and contrast to what is happening today. Just before Alvin comes in, though, it's 7 minutes to the hour of 7 o'clock. We have to take a break at 7 o'clock at the top of the hour. Bosso, the second leg of the question or the response rather that Skerrit gave is that he said the issues that we have been clamoring about for so long, the present bills before Parliament will, he said, correct or rectify these issues of ours. Can you speak to that, please?
Well, basically, we'll talk about the campaign financing in a while, the finance legislation in a while. But as I said, we had about 40 or 42 or so, 44 matters which we recommended, and we zeroed down to get things moving to 5 areas, which campaign finance is part of it. Cleansing the voters list, because you can't have a country with, we can probably say 69, 70,000 people, and your voters list is more than your population. Wherever in the world we have seen that, except in Dominica, that you have more people voting than you have people on the island. So it means all children voting, and you ought to be 18 years to be on the voters list. So that's what we're saying. Let us cleanse that. So the voters list will reflect the number of persons who are voting on the island, okay? The residency question is something that to vote, you have to be a resident, you have to be living in a polling division, and you register in that polling division, which allows you to vote in that polling division. For example, I'm from Maho, I can't go and vote in Kenfield, although Kenfield is the same constituency. I can't go and vote in Campbell or Warner or Massac. I vote in Maho. And in Maho, I am registered in what we call FO3. I can't go and vote in FO2 because my name will not appear there. I'll vote in FO3. And if we have me in FO2 and you have me in FO3 and you have me in FO whatever else, it means that I'm voting multiple times. And that's what we're saying we want to cure, okay? The other thing too is the voter ID cards. I mean, they were talking about the voter national ID card. And with a national ID card, it means you will get on the card from 10 years. To be on the voter card, you have to be 18 years and above. To be on the national ID card, you have to be 10 years and above. A 10-year-old can't vote under our law. And the Electoral Commission do not have the jurisdiction, okay, to issue national ID cards to non-voters. So they'd have to amend the law to give them that responsibility. So they realized that they were not on good grounds with that. So they agree for the voter ID card, which we accept, but now they're leaving the information on the card to the discretion of the Electoral Commission. So we're saying, no, why not put that in the legislation and ask for the biometric to be legislated, so the Chief Elections Officer and the Commission do not have this election, they put that, next election they don't put it, and so on. You have a confusion going ahead. So you want to have a standardized voter ID card, and that's what we're asking for. And these things are not difficult to achieve. These are simple things to achieve, and therefore there is no way the legislation can improve that going to Parliament if you do not make that part of the bills that you're presenting to the House of Assembly. I serve in the House, and when matters come to the House, you debate, but the presenter of that bill has to ensure that it covers adequately the subject that it has to cover and people are talking about. And when you come to the debate, people debate, give their point of view, what they accept, what they don't accept. And then it go to a committee stage where in the committee stage, the little fine areas and amendments will be made. And the Attorney General may, or the government may or may not accept it. The difficulty we have though is in Dominica, we have 21 constituencies. The government have, out of that, 19, okay? And then under our constitution, they're allowed to bring in another 5 senators. Then we can bring in an attorney general who is an elected member of parliament or a public servant. We have a public servant, but he's more political than anything else. More political than anything else. You don't understand that he's the people's attorney general and a lawyer, and he has to defend the people. So it is very scary, though, that if the matter go before Parliament, the ISO does have it. Okay, we have in the opposition 2 independent members, and we have another 4 senators as the law provided, and they'll make their contribution, but they're just 2 elected and 4 nominated members. In a matter like that, every member can vote. So yes, when the vote is over, you have 19 elected on the government side, 5 senators voting for. The Attorney General will vote. I know in St. Vincent, and I tell people to look at the St. Vincent model. You have a public servant Attorney General. He don't in the Parliament. So they're opposition, and supporting government. He don't speak. All he does is, when the matter has been debated, he gives advice to ensure that it is in sync with the Constitution of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. In our case, we're a different type of people. I don't know where we get that from. We just break law and expect that we will have a smooth country and so on. So that is the fear there, that if we do not correct this thing before and it goes to Parliament, then the eyes have it and we have a bill that legalizes the loopholes for the government to exploit. And that's what we're trying. So there is no way that what they have in the bill can correct it. And while on that, let me just say, from day one, the government has contaminated in the negative the whole reform process. First of all, they hijack it like it's this. They put the Electoral Commission on a slip, except 2 members who were there fighting, doing their utmost to keep the population and the stakeholders informed and connected. Then they refused to make monies available for the commission to function. Then they ignored the Mayor Motley report. One commissioner who still serves, a lawyer, he said what Mayor Motley, who was leader of the opposition then in St. Vincent and was prime minister now, what she presented, Barbados, yes, what she presented did not even worth the paper that it was written on. That's how disrespectful these people can be. And then you had the OAS Commonwealth CARICOM, okay? And then he now rejected their recommendation, which is similar to what we, lawfully, as you know, have been pushing and talking about. Then he went for Sir Dennis Byron, a well-respected jurist in the Caribbean, who served as president of the Caribbean Court of Appeal, and before that, he was the Chief Justice of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, retired, and become Chief Justice of the CCJ, and paid him $700,000+. And that work was thrown aside. The Prime Minister had a big show read by the State House to present the reports to the various groups. I mean, the Freedom Party did not go, other groups go, and they took their thing. And I even was telling some groups why you went, and they say, well, I mean, the House had left this table, so therefore you have to join the game at some point and see how you can move the process forward amicably. That was some groups thinking. And then all of a sudden, those recommendation was thrown aside, having paid for it. So it belonged to us because our taxpayers paid for it. And the Prime Minister is too country-booky, in my view, to behave in that when come and say we don't have the right to be actors in our own democracy. He's out of order. And I think when he became Prime Minister as a young man, I thought he could have learned and become a model of a young Prime Minister in the country. But to me, he has what they call a contaminated evil brain that think it is always good for him to have a fight with people who are making the effort for what is right in our democratic country.
Then give us back our dollars, sir. Stay in your lane. We know you know our country, love to spend big money, sir. Stay in your lane. The people frustrated and tired. Dominicans have taken all they can take. Give us reform before the fall house break. The people know of who was brigade. Make 29 and blood that was shed. So if you don't deliver for what we pay, sky pool crossing. What? Whoa, nana, whoa. Dominicans, why, Dominicans. We need to fight for what we believe. Enough talking, time for action. We need reform, we need our voters' card. The people pressurizing, yes, they're ready for action. How long before we get our reform? If we vote without voters' ID, we could vote for a dead family. And before ballot done count, landslide victory.
All right, Dominicans, that's the man, Mr. Abel Cheku John Baptist, singing about we want our electoral reform.
We hear you write a report to Annie Valdez.
Just in case you're tuning in at this time, 5 minutes past the hour of 7 o'clock in Dominica and the rest of our Eastern Caribbean. It is now 5 minutes past 7 o'clock.
Reform before reform.
We're talking to Mr. Johnson Boston here, the chairman of the Electoral Reform Coalition movement in Dominica.
May 29 and blood that was shed.
On that much talked about topic, re-electoral reform. Just trying to make that space where elections is concerned in Dominica are free, fair, and much more transparent. That's all in a nutshell. The people needs to push back.
Stop you studying your magic, you can fool everybody, sir.
So folks, now is that time. We're going to open up the lines just in case you want to call into the program and make a comment, a suggestion, or ask a question.
Stay in your lane.
The numbers to call into the program live, they are on your screen as we speak.
Between right and wrong, give us reform before next election. The people ready.
We'll take some of your comments from the live feed as well.
Country, a democratic one. Dominicans want the reform for what they pay. Oh, sky pool crossing.
Electoral reform is essential, fundamental, absolutely necessary, the basis for democracy.
If you cannot deliver, then give us back our dollars, sir. Stay in your lane. We know you know our country, love to spend big money, sir.
Again, the numbers to call into the Civic Vibes program, they are 245-2396 or 615-9470. They're scrolling across your screen as we speak. Yes. Just take one more verse of this song and we get back to Mr. Johnson Boston in just a bit. One more verse.
Dominicans, Dominicans, we need our electoral reform. Tell Simbad, call the cabinet, our money can just go to waste like that. Dominicans pay their money. You should perform your duty. How long before we get our reform? We have some elections in the interest of one man. But like Egypt, the people need freedom. If you cannot deliver, then give us back our dollars, sir. Stay in your lane. We know you know our country, love to spend big money, sir. Stay in your lane. The people frustrated and tired. Dominicans have taken all they can take. Give us reform before the fall house break.
All right, folks, it is 7 minutes past 7 o'clock. Let's get back to Mr. Johnson Boston as we must continue on with the conversation here. We bring it to a wrap at 8 o'clock tonight. Mr. Johnson Boston, as we await on some calls here, someone is asking you in the name of Anthony John Baptist. Lofty, ask Mr. Johnson Boston what section of the bill that he doesn't agree with, because this is what the Prime Minister is saying, and no one is saying what part of the bill they don't agree with. So, Mr. Boston, that's a very direct question to you. What are some of the sections of the proposed bills that you and the ERC...
I don't hear you now.
What's that?
I'm missing you. I don't hear you now. I was hearing you.
I'm saying to you, based on the live feed, someone is asking you here to spell out some of the sections of the bill that you and the ERC are not in agreement with.
Well, I made it clear earlier on that we do not agree with the section that speaks about the ID card, because what it says there is that the information on the ID card will be left to the discretion of the Chief Elections Officer. And we're saying that should be legislated what goes in the card, because the card cannot be left, hanging that this election, you decide, okay, we put this, next election, the Chief Elections Officer decide we're not putting that. And therefore you have every election a back and forth. But if you legislate the information with biometric data into the card, it is there for all elections. So the Chief Elections Officer, neither the Electoral Commission will interfere with that. Now, there is no provision in there for campaign finance reform, and we're saying that should not be omitted from the recommendation made by Sir Dennis Byron. So Sir Dennis Byron, when he was doing his consultancy, he consulted widely. He saw what was spent in the 2019 election and how the opposition could not compete based on the amount of resources that were available to the incumbent, because they got all these kickbacks from passport, from hotel building and all of these things, and therefore they could spend widely to bring in voters, to pick, while I'm that lofty, I was speaking to young people. So
just before you move across, Bosso, let's be very, very specific here, because some people are saying or suggesting on the live feed that when Roosevelt asked for what we are not in agreement with, they are hearing nothing. So you're saying, one, you and the ERC, you guys are not in agreement with what is proposed as per the cards for election. And secondly, the issue of campaign finance reform, the campaign finance regulations. At least those two you're suggesting.
And also the cleansing the voters list. We've heard the information that was placed there to cleanse the list is not properly I would say, explained in the sense that you have to belong to a constituency, to a polling division, to be registered. It doesn't mean that if you are not on the list for some reason or the other, that you cannot get back on the list if you reestablish yourself in your polling division. So we're saying that has to be clear and proper. I mean, I can give an example, for example, in Jamaica, but at some point they decide they put in law every 10 years, they cleanse the list. And when they come to your home, if you're not there, they put a little note under your door to give you a couple of days to come to the electoral office. And if the days expire, you're not there, then your name is removed. And if you want to get back on the list, then you have to make the effort. I mean, a party cannot be making effort for you as a voter. And because we're in government, we put in things to comfort you, and you make no effort yourself. So these are things. So is it 5, as I said earlier on, out of 30-something that we have recommended? These 5 areas, we felt these are the vexing issues in the legislation, and therefore we need to, as government, opposition, civil society, meet and put correctly those things in place, so it is not left to the fancy of any party, because government comes, government goes.
Yeah.
But the law remains that of the people.
All right, thanks. Alvin, you want to make a point and then I'll chime in? Yes.
Yeah, let me just say too that I take a brief look at the proposed bills that is before the House. And one area which I think Mr. Boston mentioned that needs some clarity as well has to do with residency. Section 33(2)(a) of the Constitution clearly defines who can vote and cannot vote in Dominica. In other words, it clearly outlines the question as it relates to residency. So that's an area that is kind of gray, that needs to be explored, that needs to be clarified. And let me also say, though, that as it relates to voter ID, you recall, Lofty, we had the supervisor of election for Antigua and Barbuda on this program some time ago, Mr. Hughes, and that did a splendid job with us. And one of the things I recall he said quite clearly as it relates to voter ID is that there were 36 security features on that card. You remember that? He said 36, some that are clearly evident and some that you wouldn't even know. But once the card is scanned, it picks up those security features. And in terms of what Mr. Boston just said as it relates to the determining what goes on the card, in developing those legislations, you'll have what is called the Parent Act. So you'll have Act number so that refers to the electoral or the People's Act as it's referred to in Grenada and some other places. So that is the Act. Then you have what is called the regulations. And the regulations now are developed to regulate the Act. So the regulations will tell you the things that, how do you give effect to the Act or what's in the Act? And that is what I think Mr. Boston is explaining. That if in the Act you have the question of voter ID, in the regulations now, the regulations should be developed to say, well, this is what goes in the voter's ID, biometrics, voters thing, all the various things. And therefore, you don't leave it to the discretion of the commission or the chief elections officer to determine what goes in with this voter ID card. Because once you leave that particular matter to a discretion of an individual, whoever that individual happens to be, then he exercises that discretion. So I think this is some of the things that Mr. Boston is saying, and I just wanted to elucidate on that a little.
All right, indeed. And just to, yes, Bosso, just before you come in here, and just to add to what you said, Alvin said, and to reference the people who are on the live feed, let me just be very, very clear as well, because Roosevelt sometimes, he normally like to twist his words and like to throw red herrings out there. And his people normally buy these things line, hook, and sinker. In that he keeps saying, and I saw it in the live feed tonight, some of the sentiments that we in the opposition or part of the opposition or the resistance out there, we are not clear. We are not saying what we want or what we need change in those bills to suit free, fair, and transparent general elections. And so I don't know how clearer can we say it again for Roosevelt to stop peddling those lies. And tonight, I am saying, based on what you guys said, we have a problem with the confirmation process. That is one area. So get it clear, people. So when Roosevelt come and talk his rubbish and his lies, you can confront him head on. We are saying the confirmation process that the bills are pushing, we are not in agreement with that. What we are saying or suggesting is a re-registration drive. So that everybody, let us start fresh. Let us start from point one. But what the bills they are suggesting is using that confirmation process so that the same old bloated list that is there already, it is just a matter of going through that list, contaminated as it is, and having people confirmed or reconfirmed, as it were, to stay on that list. We are saying that is a corruption of the process. You cannot get new wine out of old wine, if you understand that lingo. The list is corrupted, and we have to start at a fresh point. And the only way we can really start at a fresh point is to re-register Dominicans, those who are eligible to be on that list. And so you cannot take John Brown, who is on that list and who is not eligible to be on that list, and trying to get him reconfirmed to be. That is making a mockery of the system. So that is one. Yeah. And Alvin, just before you come in, just to again solidify your point and Bosso's point, the Byron brother, we paid pretty close to $1 million to come up with recommendations. He suggested the monies that are flowing through the elections, we need to regulate these monies. And so he suggested campaign finance reform or regulation should be part of that process in moving forward. So that is number two. Roosevelt Skerritt and his corrupt gang, deceptively so, did not put none, N-O-N, none of these utterances or writings of Byron as part of the proposed bills before Parliament. And so how much more clearer can we get so that Roosevelt can stop peddling those utter lies and talking about, oh, we don't know, we are not specific, we are not this, we are not that. We are saying what we want in the interest of elections moving forward. But for some reason, he keeps injecting that very poisonous venom by saying that we don't know what we want, we are not specific, we are not this, we are not that. And the list goes on and on and on. In the interest of time, I will just stop on two. Also talked about the card, the way how you can identify properly any voter coming to vote. That we have an issue with as well. And it goes on and on and on. And so if you are not taking time to listen to the call of the opposition people out there, what else must we do? And so I just decided tonight is a night for us to sort of put that thing to sleep. And that notion about we don't know what we want, we are not clear, we are not specific, that is utter rubbish. And Roosevelt Skerritt, you are poisoning the mind of your listeners and letting them speak or allowing them to rehearse or rehash more rubbish than you in the public. Bosso.
Yes. Before Bosso come in, let me just say very quickly, the question of the re-registration is not something that is unheard of. Antigua did it. Jamaica did it. So several of the islands in the region have gone through that and did it. And they did very effectively too, and within a short space of time. So that is one. The second thing that I would say too is that even in Antigua, the then supervisor of elections that we had says one of the things that they do in Antigua is that they consistently sanitize the list. And I recall reading the CCJ's report of July 5th, 2022. And one of the vexing issues that was raised in that report has to do with the electors list. And they made it quite clear that that constitutes the central element of any elections. The list. It's like, in other words, I think I explained it here already on a previous program. It's like you are a member or not a member of a credit union or an organization. The only way you can vote for officers to serve is to be on the list, to be a member, a paid member at that. So if the list is corrupt and we have persons on that list that should not be on the list voting, then obviously the result of the election is going to be unlawful. And I think that is so fundamental and easy to understand. And I think those are the major areas. Campaign finance, and I'm sure Boss is going to talk to that in a while, so I don't want to go into that area. But campaign finance is a major area. And within the region, we have legislations on campaign finance. So it's not to say, well, we don't have the best practices around that we can learn from. We can get somebody from Jamaica to come to Dominica and say, hey guys, this is how you do it.
And
so
Alvin, not just that. These people, based on what I know, they are willing to help us in Dominica pro bono.
Yes. But go ahead, Mr. Boston.
I would suggest or recommend to all your listeners and viewers and people generally, Dominicans at home and abroad, to themselves, make themselves familiar with the legislation, to read it themselves, because it is not merely something that is left for the ERC, because the ERC is doing this thing free of charge. Nobody's being charged. Is paying us. When we have an activity, we ask for support from Dominicans at home and abroad. Where in the event, we pass a hat or a box to collect so we can defray some of the expenses that we incur. So the Dominican people, to do them well, to understand what we are putting forward, because, say, for example, in the reconfirmation, the regulation is not well defined. So it says you can, for example, a person can call and say from ground form, and they may be all the way in Switzerland, all the way in Japan, and they've been re-registered. So we're saying, why not give a standardized thing that you have to bring in certain document? I mean, you know, I went to the bank to do some transaction, and the bank is asking me for 2 ID, okay, 2 ID. The bank is asking me for a proof of address just to open an account. You know, you're not a loan asking for, you know. Because I'm going for a loan, just to open an account, proof of address, and so forth. I mean, I had to be patient with the guy because that's their policy. In our country, you can just call and say, I'm from Ground Fund, and somebody register you. Then it gives an option that if you have two residents, or you have 2 areas, you can decide where you want to put as your address. My God, if you're voting in Maho, I mean, obviously, you live in Maho, you live in Jimmy, the Maho constituency, that's where your address will be. That's where your voter address will be. Why make all of these, you know, calamity with simple process? I mean, the OS help a lot of the rest of the Caribbean islands to do their reform and pay for it. They pay for it. We follow the St. Kitts model, and the Governor General there, he took charge of the process. And he said he wants all stakeholders with equal participation on that committee. And ensure the opposition participated in everything that was being discussed until they arrived at the reform, okay? In Dominica, the Prime Minister don't want to meet, he don't want to see, and he go there and peddle all these lies and so forth. And when I come on the campaign finance, I'll tell you some of the things that he went out there pushing just to create a hate between the government and the opposition. Why you want to be a government and promoting hate between persons who are making recommendations, persons who are suggesting stuff? Not everything we say we expect the government to take, but my God, there must be some common understanding on issues that have been confronting the country for all these years. And the Prime Minister himself recognized that. And what he's saying now is that we does not want reform. And we have been on reform for all these years. I remember after the 2009 election, right? The thing came to a, you know, to a real exposed where the loopholes were exploited by the incumbent. And then the Freedom Party and the UWP at the time Ron Green was leader of UWP and Judith Pester was leader of the Freedom Party, issued a white paper on reform and what we should do to cleanse the list and to put some basic thing in place to facilitate free and fair and transparent elections. In fact, a delegation traveled from Dominica to St. Kitts to meet the heads that were meeting in St. Kitts that year, after 2009 election. The only prime minister who met them was Stephenson King from St. Lucia. At the time, he was prime minister of St. Lucia. He was the only prime minister who gave him a hearing. All the others ignored them. What the senior council had going, there was a guy at Charlie John, whatever his name, in St. Kitts. And all they were doing is to take out photos all where the delegation went and send back here to create a mockery and so forth. That's all, to take out photos of where they go, with their meeting, and to send back here to make a mockery out of the simple system where educated people, citizens of the country, who are in the politics of the country, who are interested in the government of the country, went to meet the heads. And that was the behavior of some people here who call themselves liberites and their partners in St. Kitts. Let's look at St. Vincent. I mean, before St. Vincent, all the other territories for the last 5 electoral cycles have changed their government. Dominica has remained, in that kind of bind. Why? Something is not right. Then let's take one can say St. Vincent, Ralph has been there for a while. But if you notice in St. Vincent, the electoral system is working in St. Vincent. It's just that Ralph may be a little more effective to master whatever it is in St. Vincent in that case. Because the election before, Ralph Gonzalez won out of how many seats they have? I think they have about 15 seats. I think he won he won 8 out of that. And the opposition won 7. So it's a 1-seat majority Ralph had. In the last election, they won 9 and the opposition won 6. And the one they took from the opposition, they took it narrowly. So that tells you that the opposition in St. Vincent and the people who oppose the government has a stake to participate freely and fairly in the process. Yes, my information from St. Vincent said they also give gifts, yes. They give gifts and they give all this stuff to boost their campaign. But the general thing, the voters list and all that reflects the number of persons voting in that country. In our country, this government is there for 25 years, but they feel that they have to exploit the loopholes. And one of the things they depend on, though, I mean, our brothers and sisters in the international community, our brothers and sisters, our Dominicans, and we have to live with them, cooperate with them, work with them. And what we'd like is a country with opportunities where the government is governing properly, creating opportunities that if you live abroad and you see opportunities to be employed in your country, you can come back. It's not a show we're running. So if you live in America, you live in England, wherever, and Dominica is doing well, and you can become an employee in your country, then that's what you want. Can you imagine we have Dominicans all over the world, and we have foreigners who are ambassadors for Dominica? We don't even know them.
Yeah.
How you can run a country like that for all these years?
True. Bosso, yes, it is 7:30. That means we have half an hour more to go. Let's take some of the comments from the live feed because our people there, they are interacting with us as well. Alvin, please feel free to chime in whenever you feel the need to do that. Also, Brother Bosso, what we must ask you there before you leave is that from the ERC's end now, what is it in terms of mobilization of the masses, in terms of pushback? Because you heard Skerrit said clearly well, nothing, no one is going to stop him in the first quarter of 2025 to push through his bogus bills in Parliament. So the question to you is, what is the ERC prepared to do and is doing at this time to help mobilize the people in terms of a pushback? But first up, Rosa Robinson is writing here. I'm from the Mont John constituency and I register both Mont John and Rivière Civic. I have no idea who did this. Can you help out, Alvin? Who may have done that, Obosu?
Who?
Well, you heard the question? You heard what
No, I missed part of it. I heard the name of the person.
Somebody, Rosa Robinson, wrote, I am from Mont John and I am registered both at Mont John and Mont Civic. I have no idea who did this. So apparently she's from Monjon, and she's registered on the voters list as being from Monjon, and she's also registered there as being from Riviera Civic. And she's saying she don't know who did that. So but Lofty's asking me if I can help out, if I know who did that. So I'm passing it on to you, but so maybe you might be able to tell me who did that.
So she registered twice in the same constituency.
Yeah, she's registered 2 places, and she's saying that she wasn't the one who did that. So she's asking, how was that possible?
So these are all the things we're trying to close up, because I mean, we have been accustomed to the phrase "one man, one vote." So it didn't say 1 man, 6 votes, 1 man, 2 votes. It's a 1 man, 1 vote, and so on. And therefore, these are the loopholes we're trying to clear out. I'll give an example. We were going through some years ago through the Roseau South list. And there's a lady who registered in Newtown, which is Roseau South, part of the Roseau South constituency, under her birth surname. Then she went to live in Kings Hill and registered again under her married surname. So she was twice in that constituency. Okay, another example I can give you, there was a gentleman who lived in Massac for some years, and he registered in La Plaine, and he was registered in Massac. He was a strong Freedomite supporting the Freedom Party, and one day he come telling Brian and myself that I gave the party 2 votes. So Brian said, well, how you can give the party 2 votes? That is not possible. So yes, I just voted in La Plaine, and I'm voting here in Massac. I voted in Massac. So Brian told him, that is not right. If you've been caught doing that, you had called for jail, prison time. So you have to decide whether you want to stay in La Plaine or stay in Massac. And we helped him to correct that. And he decided to stay in Massac, remove the La Plaine and stay in Massac, and so forth. Brian could decide, well, you know, and giving the Freedom Party 2 votes, why not leave it? But it's not fair, even if you're winning. I'll give you another example. When I ran for the Maho by-election in 1996, when Mr. Allen left and became a judge, and I contested, there's a guy from Salisbury who called me to register him to vote in Maho. I asked him, are you registered in Salisbury? He told me no. I said, you sure? He told me no. I explained to him, if you are in Salisbury, you can ask for transfer to be in Maho, because you live in Maho now, but it will not take effect until the general list is published in November. So you will not be able to vote in the Maho by-election, which was somewhere around August and so on. He said he's not registered. So I said, okay, I contested another candidate. I took him to register after explaining to him. But there was somebody who supported, at the time, the UWP in the area where the guy was living. And they saw when I go with the guy. They saw when the guy came on my vehicle and we went. And the person called electoral office. Electoral office did their investigation. And then the chief election officer at the time was a woman. I won't call her name, but it was a woman. And she called me and said, Mr. Boston, we have a case there, situation there. She said, what it is? She said, well, there's a young man who you registered, who's already registered in Salisbury. And you registered in Maho. I said, yes. I took him and I witnessed him registering in Maho. But I explained to him and he said he was not registered in Salisbury. And she said, well, that is an offense. I said, I know it's an offense, but the guy lied. He lied because I explained the process to him. So she asked me, what should I do? I said, well, remove him from Maho. Let him stay in Salisbury. If he wants, he will transfer to Maho, and his name will appear on the general list in November, and so forth. So these things can happen, and we're saying that these are the things we want to cure. If the system is well set up, well organized, you have your voter ID card with your biometric attached to it, information attached to it. You can't come and show yourself as John. And quickly, I'm giving another example. I met a young guy once outside of Jolly's Pharmacy in Roseau. And I see him watching me, and I said, you're from Portsmouth? He told me, no. I said, well, you know me, because I used to work in Portsmouth at the time. I said, you know me? He told me, he said me for the first time. But I look like a genuine person. So I said, where are you from? He told me, he's from Haiti. And then this guy became friend with me, and so forth. I go to Roseau. I called him. If I have something to carry, to do, he helps, and so on. So one day he called me and told me in 2019 that he was living in Fankoli, and he was given a name to register, to go and vote, a name. But nobody never registered him because he's not in Dominica. He didn't even have a work permit. He was trying to get a work permit. That's how he get involved with me. and he didn't have a citizenship. But somebody gave him a name to go and ask, a dead person name to go and ask in the polling station and vote on that name. And the person then offered him that once he votes well, they will organize him with his work permit and his citizenship and so on. I told him, my friend, if you do that, you'll get caught, first of all, when you go there. Somebody will pick up your accent and so forth. And once they ask the question and they found you to be violating the law, you'll go to prison. So I dissuaded him from doing that. And then after that, the guy we spoke and he told me, man, he didn't realize that was so dangerous. And he still wanted his work permit and his citizenship. He wanted to have done it, but he called me for guidance. And then the guy left the country and went, because, you know, a lot of them come here as a gateway to the US and so on. So this is the kind of thing that is happening in the election. So we shouldn't pretend that we're just talking as ERC. And the other thing that the Prime Minister does on his team, when they don't refer to the ERC and recognize us as a team of persons from different backgrounds, different groups working together. They identify us as UWP. As if they're infested with UWP. So everybody who speaks in the country is UWP, because as far as the country, UWP may not have the right to talk because it's only them. So once you talk in Dominica opposing something, whether you're a liberator or not, they classify UWP. And that is the kind of insult that we have been going through for 25 years.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Bosu, for your examples that you give. Alvin, let's just run through the list here of some of the comments. We punch it at Bosu, and then he's going to tell us about the mobilization effort. Dorival Drygo is writing here. Bosu, and listen very well. Dominica's voters list cannot exceed the country's population, he writes. Furthermore, if one has to be 18 years of age or older to be eligible to vote, there is no way, he says here, the number of qualified voters, if registered, can be that high. Take a note of his comments here. Let's see if we can get some other comments coming in here. Marshall Lawrence says, Alvin, the Antiguan brother also said that the voters list is consistently sanitized. Those two, Boston, and your comments, and then we're going to move to Alvin for some more comments.
Well, I made that point earlier on that you had more people on the voters list than the population. And this voters list has not been cleansed for so long, more than 30 years, and so forth. And therefore, people just on the list. I remember the 2019 election, there was persons who came brought from the Roseau North constituency into Roseau Central. And they were registered on empty lots. And when we complained to the chief elections officer, he went to look at those addresses and recognized his empty lots that were there. And he professionally removed their name because they were not qualified. These were persons who from Goodwill area, but they felt at the time the guy who was running for Goodwill was in good order. He could have won that seat. So they brought in some of the new voters from there into Roseau. And the guy removed them on the list, which he was legally entitled to do. And then Tony Astafan then went and had an issue with that and make a statement that he will challenge the chief elections officer in the court. And if you see how quickly they haste to get him out, when his retirement age arrived, and we had recommended, same as Dennis Byron and others, that the chief elections officer would retire at 55, that's what the law says, but they recommend an increase to 65 to create some stability in the office, particularly with this reform process going on. But they hasted to remove him. Because why? He had stood for principle as to how the chief elections officer must carry out his functions, his duties. You know?
Yeah, there's also there's also one of the viewers that wrote, since reform was initiated, a number of related organizations have presented their reports. Why is there no report from Dominica Electoral Commission or even a press conference from the commission? Can you speak to the complete silence of the commission? Why you think what is going on?
Well, we find it amazing that, I mean, Chief Elections Officer, Electoral Commission in the past have met with the stakeholders and discussed. I have been in meetings several times with the Electoral Commission before. Duncan still was chairman before this commission. And they did their work based on principle and the rule of the law. In fact, once you appointed as a commissioner. In fact, the president appoints all the commissioners, but 2 has to be recommended to the president by the prime minister and 2 by the leader of the opposition. And the president appoints the chairman, who now become, if you like, more like the independent player there, and expect that whoever the chairman is will take the side of what is in the best interest of the voters, the people, the country, and democracy, and so forth. And we found that they have gone to complete silence. And so we wrote, and I said, we wrote to meet them. They haven't even acknowledged the letters that we wrote to them. We went to deliver a booklet to them on the recommendation that we settled on to get this thing moving quickly. We were met with police who were standing there and so on. They said we can only enter 2 by 2. We had 6 of us to enter. When we went to present to the prime minister, he was not there. When we met the financial center, I went to the White House. And all fairness, I went to the White House, and I had an easier time going there than I had to go into financial center in Dominica. Then we went to, I went to the House of Commons and the House of Lords in Britain, and I had less hustle going in there than I had going to the financial center. I had more hustle going to the Prime Minister's office to deliver a document, 2 of us, than I had going to the President's office in Dominica. So what is the issue? What are they afraid about? I was searched like I'm a criminal. I even get upset when the police keep searching me after I just left one who asked me if I have any weapon. I said no. I go to one that searched me. When I pass that one, go to another one. He's asking me if I have a weapon. I said, well, you just hear the officer ask me if I have any weapon. And I said no. So why would you think I have a weapon going to the Prime Minister's office? And so on. So that is the situation that the country is in. And that's why I want to say that everybody must see it as their mission to ensure the Prime Minister understand and recognize that those vexing issues should be removed from the legislation, should be removed, and campaign finance should be included in this thing. I see the time here, but we haven't touched on campaign finance yet.
Yeah,
one or 2 comments from the live feed, and then we're going to ask you to go in that department, go in that area before we bring it to a wrap. Adelaide Paul is writing there, that is why complete re-registration is important, I guess, based on the point that we made before in terms of the re-registration drive. You'd want to speak to that, Bosso, and also let us touch on the campaign financing aspect of it. And also the last leg, which we must touch on, is what is the ERC doing as we speak to help mobilize the people out there. Before that, though, let's take a telephone call from this caller here. Caller, yes, good evening. You're on.
Good evening to you, Lofty.
Yes, good evening, sir.
Yeah, and good evening to the rest of the people on the panel. Lofty, I think over the years we can only come to the conclusion that the government, through all its activities, is not interested in giving us meaningful electoral reform, and it's very disappointing that the head of the commission has not spoken since he was appointed.
Mr. Duncan Stowe.
Duncan Stowe. He spoke only on that occasion when he was appointed, and he has not spoken since. Now, this body is supposed to ensure that we have free and fair elections without any interference from anyone. So he has a major job to protect the interests of the people and the state, and he has remained silent. He has absolutely no excuse, because we are now hearing him spending hours commentating on Calypso. So he cannot say that he doesn't have the time to deal with the issues related to the present situation regarding our electoral system. So I would call on Mr. Duncan Stowe to call a press conference, have an open press conference, and answer questions as to where we are at the present time. Now, I have a lot to say, but I'll keep it very short. One point I'd like to make. The Prime Minister has claimed, in order to fool the people, that the opposition is trying to have them take their fingerprints and put on a card, and by so doing, the opposition is attempting to qualify them every single voter, every single individual voter as a criminal, because the only time that fingerprints get involved is when they're hunting for criminals. Now, we know that there are many different situations, including traveling through the United States and so on, where you have to use your finger, actually all 5 fingers when you're entering the US. And I'll give you a very simple example. I've been working on a job recently here in London, in England, where we have to enter a creche, a school for children, in order to do work within that school environment. And guess what? You know what opens the doors? A fingerprint. One of our people has to use his fingerprint, and that fingerprint is recognized as someone authorized to enter. When he puts his finger on the pad, that is what opens the doors. So when the Prime Minister is talking about us in opposition wanting to criminalize the voters, he knows full well that he's lying. I just wanted to make that clear. And again, I'll call for Mr. Duncan Stowe to call a press conference. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you very much for your very succinct point here. Thank you very much. Yes. Bosso, did you hear what the caller said and then the aspect of campaign finance?
Yes, I heard what he said. And I want to commend all the persons who have, asked questions and sent comments, and him who have made a call. And he's correct that Duncan Stowe does have the time. I met him personally, I spoke with him. I mean, he's supposed to be my friend. But, in those serious matters, friendship don't count. You don't mix matters and so on. So he can find time to comment on Calypso in the thing, but he cannot find time to do that crucial work. And one of the things I find this happening is the fact that the Prime Minister sent him this matter, this draft legislation to study. They took some time, they write for more time. When they were ready to send it to the Prime Minister, it was like a secret matter from them to him. And then now they did not even say, well, okay, we want to meet our stakeholders to agree on certain stuff. They just ignore completely the other persons who are involved in the process, the political parties who are involved in the process, and the business community. He just ignored them and went straight to the Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister pick it up now, like a frog picking up a piece of bread now and run to Parliament with it and having first reading and then talking about threatening to have second and third reading in the first quarter of this month, of this year. Other than Paul is correct that, I mean, to get the voters list balanced and in order, we need this re-registration and we need this proper voter ID card that goes with it, that your polling division can be identified, your name can be identified. And the caller talk about the Prime Minister tried to make it look like asking for fingerprint is a criminal matter. No. Every person who comes here to do business, what we call the economic citizenship program, they have to do a fingerprint. So if they're coming to get our passport to spend their monies and to buy our citizenship, and they have to do a fingerprint. So it means that they can be criminal with our passports, and our voters to vote cannot have their fingerprint. I mean, I travel, people who live in the United States and elsewhere. When you travel, you have to use your fingerprint. I went to Taiwan the first year I went to Taiwan. When I got off the plane, I mean, we were well looked after by what you call protocol officers. But it took us to, I was in a Palsec, took me to a little area where I had to do my fingerprint. I slept on the plane because it's a long flight. So I slept on the plane. When I reached in Taiwan, I all looking sleepy and tired. They brought me into a room to take a photo and so forth. So we watched the camera, I took my photo. So I don't see why the Prime Minister is peddling that and people agree with that.
Yeah. Also, can you just speak to the issue now? I know you touched on it earlier, but not in any a real sense as to concrete certain points. The issue of campaign finance reform to protect our democracy, and then the mobilization effort that the ERC is involved in, and then we must bring it to a wrap.
Yeah, I'll do this quickly. I know we're strained for time. One of the things that make our election, imbalance and have undermined the level playing field that we're talking about is the fact that the incumbent can exploit resources from whatever source and have all of this money being spent. The other option is that, and I said so to a team of observers who were here from the OAS Caribbean Commonwealth, what may happen is that our citizens may be discouraged from taking part in politics, or they look for dirty money to compete, and our country will end up in a situation where dirty money is creating violence and murder and all this kind of thing. Because one person said to a group of us, we can fund you and we'll ensure that you all win. But when you win, we'll discuss further. That tells you that if you're against me, Lofty, running, and you might win me, you might be bumped off. And these are the things we're trying to avoid. So campaign finance in our election, Antigua have a certain element of it. Jamaica has passed the legislation for campaign finance in Jamaica. So the parties know how much they could spend. They have to declare their source of funding and so forth. And in that case, now, any Jamaican can participate in the process. They don't have to have billions in the bank or look for any donor to do that. And we're saying that based on what Sir Dennis Byron have recommended, having studied, and we have other persons like a prominent public servant who served as cabinet secretary, a lawyer, and so on, who also made some recommendation. Now, what is so, wicked about this is that the Prime Minister, and I heard last week the Reverend Blackmore use that same foolishness, that they're saying that the opposition want government to give them money from the Treasury to campaign. And there is nowhere in any recommendation, either by the OAS, Sir Dennis Byron, or none of the groups, or not even the opposition that I know of, that went and make that recommendation and so on. What we have said is to declare your source of funding, okay, and there's a limitation as to how much each candidate should spend in a constituency and each party should spend, and you have to report on that. And I will say that we got the Jamaica model, we made it available. And so on, so that they could have a guide. But they're playing all these games, and to create division in the process, they're saying that the opposition want them. And I challenge them to come and to publish where Sir Dennis Byron or any group or the opposition have asked them to take money from the Treasury to fund the opposition campaign. That's what they push around, to create this division. And I said on another media last week, but I saw a consultation in Marigot, and when they said so, the lady jacked up to speak. You could see almost in her throat, because she was so upset about the opposition and called them lazy and all that kind of thing, because that's what they want to do, is to mislead people and to create division so that they can escape. Quickly, they're lofty. I met two young persons who work in the public service who said they're interested in participating in the politics of the country, the governance of the country. But the difficulty they have is this: because of the largesse that the government has at the disposal, it means they can get a public officer to leave his or her job to run for them, fix them up with their gratuity and so forth, pay them between the period of election and the time they resign, so they can pay their mortgage and put food on the table, and so on. If a person support the opposition want to do the same thing, they haven't got that same privilege. So the money is creating a big barrier for persons, because a lot of our candidates, most of our good candidates will come from the public service and so forth. And therefore, this is a thing that is barring a lot of people from coming forward to serve in the country. So campaign finance reform is key, and we are saying put it back, put it in the legislation, and let us all, as parties, as independent candidates, decide who and where we're getting our monies from.
Yeah, Alvin, I think you'd want to chime in as well on the last point in terms of the mobilization effort. Also, the ERC, that is made up of, the different organizations in the opposition. What is it that, we are doing in terms of mobilization of the masses for that event?
Yeah, so what I can tell you, we continue to write. We have written to a number of organizations, local, regionally and internationally. Some of them are responding quite efficiently. We are continuing to discuss. We hold press conferences. We're looking to have 2 former prime ministers here soon, and we have written already. We're waiting for confirmation, so that is in the works. We are planning to have what we call a motorcade, like what we call a whistle-stop motorcade, so we can start from one point and move to cover as many communities as possible and stop and have short talks on the reform issue, so people can learn. Because I mean, I listened to the Labour Party people on another radio station, and they were talking about this thing, and they were saying that people are not even interested. So if you are want to pass a legislation and people are not interested, your duty as a government is not to make them believe if you're doing the right thing. I mean, in the United States, people who live there will understand when there is a bill to go before Congress, they tell you speak to your member of parliament, speak to your congressman or woman, and so on, so that the people can be involved. So one should not take pleasure in the fact that people are not talking about it as the ERC is pushing. You should take pleasure in the fact that if you're doing the right thing,
is there any such things, boss, so like town hall meetings and meeting the people one-on-one in the various communities?
We are hoping to do that as well as part of the package. Town hall meetings, as I said, the resources for us is not even available. I mean, what we'll get will help us to do that. So that's on the agenda.
Okay.
But we're also encouraging the political parties to engage,
to do their part
in their constituencies, in their groups, and so on, to speak to their people and to invite us from the ERC to come to speak as well. But we'll do some of those meetings too.
All right. Bosso, thank you very much indeed. We are basically running out of time. Alvin, your final parting comments before we leave in a while, Alvin.
Yeah, well, thanks again, and let me just say thank you to Bosso for the work that he and the ERC, as chairman of the ERC and the ERC is doing. I think it's commendable, and whatever they do, they're doing on behalf of the people. But the people must get engaged. Those who are engaged must continue to be engaged, and those who are not yet engaged must themselves get engaged in the process. Let me, before I end, though, as well, say to those listening that I'm sure some of them may be aware that a group of Dominicans, 4 Dominicans in particular, residing and living in Dominica, have presented a matter, have filed a matter in the courts as it relates to the election, which will in itself have some impact on the process and all of that. And basically is asking the court, seeking a declaration from the court, as 18 declarations, if I recall, as filed on September the 4th of last year. And on October the 31st, what was called a certificate of urgency was also filed. And the reason being that up until that time, the parties who filed this matter in the court challenging the constitutionality of the 2019 and the 2022 general election, since it was felt that certain provisions of the constitutions were violated, and in particular, section 33(2)(a) of the Constitution. So a certificate of urgency was filed in October the 30th because the November, there was no hearing. But since then, a date has been set for a hearing, and that should take place, I believe it's early March, if I'm not mistaken. So there'll be a lot more being said about that particular matter. And I think this particular matter is extremely important because, as I said, over the years, there has been a number of questions raised that relates to the elections. There have been petitions filed, but unlike what has now been filed before the courts, petition does have a time stipulation. In other words, you have 21 days after a general election to file a petition if you have concerns with the court. But in seeking a declaration, as is being done now, is asking the court that there are certain matters that were done which are unconstitutional. There are no time limitations on that. And as such, we're asking the court to issue a declaration. So as we speak now, there are this matter before the court as it relates to the 2019 and the 2022 general election. And I think all the more reason that the Prime Minister should slow down, and let this matter sort itself out in terms of allowing for further consultation on the areas that Mr. Boston has just pointed out tonight, that there is serious differences. But again, just to thank Mr. Boston and to appeal to all of those who are hearing us on this program, that this calls for engagement, guys. This is not an ERC matter per se, and Mr. Boston has properly explained that. This is a matter as it affects the people of Dominica, and election has consequences. If you elect the wrong people to office, you will have wrong decision happen. Garbage collection, electrical problem, economy problem, And if you elect the right people because your process is correct, then you'll have the right people being elected to office. So that's all I'll say. 2025 is a year that we should, a year of reckoning, put it this way. And let's do what is right for the country.
Thank you. Thank you, Alvin. Thank you very much for your closing comments. Brother Boston, your final comments before we go, please. Thank you.
Well, I'll do that quickly. Let me thank you, Lofty, Alvin, and Civic Vibes for the invitation to be here. Let me thank the members of the ERFC who have been working, giving their hours, giving their time, giving even their dollars to do the little that we're doing. Let me thank those who are online, those who are viewing and listening, and those who have called and made comments, and those who have written. And let me say, as Dominicans, we have to, in 2025, focus on what is right. I mean, we may have our party, yes, and we may be excited about our political party, but we have to recognize that if our country is making progress, then all of us, whether we live in Dominica or not, will be part of that progress. If it is not making progress, we are down in the doldrum with the non-progress thing. And quickly, I'll say, in St. Kitts, when they get the reform going, the Labour Party in St. Kitts resisted the reform, very much resisted the reform, but the Governor General held his own to ensure that it was not politicized. And then election came, and there was a combination of the People's Action Movement and the People's Labour Party, and they won the government. They spent a very good 5-year term and pushed the St. Kitts economy way up. But in the second term, they had some infighting and they break up, and the election was called and Labour came back. So it doesn't mean that when you go forever. You can come back, but you come back with some learning. You purge yourself and come back with a different mindset and operate differently. So again, thank you so much. And I want to again wish everybody every success in 2025.
Thank you, Bosso.
When I feel like playing, not one of them can get my vote. I am making no sport with them. Not one. I'm tired of the politics. I'm tired of the politics. Broken promises and gimmicks. Poor people can't take it no more, that's for sure. I'm tired of the politics. I'm tired of the politics. Broken promises and gimmicks. Poor people can't take it no more, that's why this party has to go. This party has to go. Not one of them can get my vote. They have no regard for the poor.
This party have to go, says this brother in song.
Country, look what it has been brought to. The poor are getting poorer, but the wealth is in the hands of a few. Mark my words, the judgment is coming. Led by the ones that you abuse. Your reign of terror.
That's this song of empowerment as we leave you, as you go into a brand new week. So folks, that is it for yet another Civic Vibes program for the 12th of January 2025. We want to thank Mr. Johnson Boston very, very much for his commitment to the cause for country and his execution tonight in terms of the information.
Broken promises and gimmicks.
To all of you that contributed in one way, shape, or form, thank you very much for your eyes and ears each and every time.
The politics.
See you guys next week, same time, same place, if the good Lord above is willing. Bye-bye. Next time, we love you.
Gimmicks. Poor people can't take it no more, that's why this party has to go. This party has to go. Not one of them can get my vote. They have no regard for the poor. Every month we pay our taxes, and every week we pay our dues. But every day we struggle to see where the money is going and how it's being used. Shame on you, you're a stranger to the truth. Is you promise but pain you produce? You said there will be no more taxes, and we should all share the burden. Well, the burden is heavy. continue to disadvantage the poor. But I say no more. Them choosing party talk about selfish over this country. No national pride, disregard the people. They cares nothing about you to help out themselves and them friends. Look, them have to go. To vote them out, so go out and vote. That is our responsibility. And let this suffering, it got to end. Let it come to an end. The others run to like catch it, brother. Not one of them can get my vote. Not one vote for them.